All right. I think we will get started just again with the basics. And if a few more folks come in the next minute or so, then hopefully we won't have gone too far into the topic. We have had a little bit of gap. I think our last update was back in April. So it's nice to have you folks back. This happens to be our 10th testing the limits update. So hopefully those in attendance perhaps have attended some in the past, or you'll attend some in the future. We try to have these roughly every 2 months or so following the IEEE 802 interim or plenary cycles. So of course we just had an interim back in September, so hence our update here. Really briefly, if you're not familiar with UNH-IOL, we are located just north of Boston, Massachusetts, and Durham, New Hampshire. Been doing this for 35 plus years, and certainly happy to share our experience in all flavors of Ethernet physical layer testing and TSN specifically, as well as other topics related as the group may wish here. Happy to go through just briefly my involvement with the industry if we haven't had the pleasure of connecting before. Heavily involved in the 802.3 and .1 spaces, Open Alliance, Avenue Alliance, working with the APL group in their spaces, working with IEEE in various activities. And my colleague, Jason Sisk, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Bob.
Yes, your microphone's not working, Jason.
Oh, no.
Oh, such is technology these days.
Oh, no. Oh, well. Well, we'll figure it out. 1 second. It's working now?
While Jason addresses that, he's my lead on our single pair Ethernet physical layer test spaces, working on all forms of physical layer testing from 10 megabit out through multi-gigabit, as well as some other related Ethernet physical layer technologies. So certainly, Jason, hopefully will be able to present when we get to his slides. Today, we're going to just go through a few updates on the recent interims, talk about some of our upcoming PlugFest activities and related single pair Ethernet technologies that we've made progress on since our last update in April, and also look to update everyone on what we're doing for sub-nanosecond precision testing, as well as some activity around the webinars, and in this case, actually, it's also a webinar for resilient PNT, the position, navigation, and timing that the IEEE is pursuing. But again, as mentioned at the onset, we're going to try to do this in just over 30 minutes. It's probably going to take a little bit more than 30 minutes to go through some of the content we have here. So feel free to type in any questions you might have or chat. And when we get done with the content of the slides, certainly we'll open up the mic so we can have a discussion. And this material is also going to be posted later if you'd like to refer a colleague or such. Jason, if your microphone is working, perhaps you can speak to the .3 update.
I believe it's working.
Negative.
Can you hear me now? No, you can't hear me?
Negative.
It looks like it's working from Zoom. I don't know.
Sorry, okay. Jason. How about this? I'll do the .1 update. You fix your microphone, and then we'll come back.
It seems Bob may not have an audio.
So back. For the .1 update, still a side story here. This event was hosted at GE Aerospace over in New York. And it was great to have folks on site from parties such as Boeing or NASA. And the .3 interim was way down. I'm sure it was lovely in Brazil, coincident with the IEEE Ethernet and IP Tech Days, as well as the Open Alliance face-to-face meeting. Now, I guess there's 3 basic updates I'd like to go through here. One, as shown, is the aerospace progress, appropriate given GE Aerospace was the host here. But I think it has a broader implication. Rather than focusing just on an existing TSN standard, one of, I'm sure, more than a few gaps has been identified in the aerospace profile needs, specifically around how to deal with fault tolerance and timing. And in that context, there's this presentation that was given jointly by Microchip, JPL, and NASA that proposed further details for the fault-tolerant module, or FTM. What this introduces into the TSN ecosystem is a layer where you can effectively define algorithms that are standards-based that would allow you to handle failures in time sources. You need redundant time sources for various reasons, but as soon as you have two sources of time, a man with two clocks doesn't know what time it is. So how do you mitigate that? Two default algorithms are proposed: a hybrid mid-value selection algorithm and a closest pair selection algorithm, both of which can be replaced, right? They're in either situation, it's not both. So you pick one of those, or you define a third one for your application. But at least this defines a layer that can be managed and specified such that holdover behavior and fault mitigation behaviors are standardized. This also has a context in the upcoming resilient PNT discussion that we'll get to. But that was an interesting contribution to highlight from that meeting. In brief, two other significant updates from that meeting. One around the DG profile, that's the automotive TSN profile. And in that context, there was, I think, substantial improvement in the industry's direction, in my opinion. Notably, the last update we gave in April, there had not yet been a draft produced, updated draft produced for many months in this space. Since April, both draft 2 and draft 2.1 have moved forward based on presentations in March from JASPAR. And JASPAR was addressing concerns that were legitimate with the current 802.1as approach, notably but not exclusively specific to the use of announce messages. Even though BMCA would be turned off, devices would still need to send announce messages. And so effectively what got written into both draft 2 and 2.1 of the automotive TSN draft profile was the use of AUTOSAR's time sync specification. And while there's nothing wrong with what AUTOSAR is doing, there's still some optional behaviors and formats of frame specifications that led to some concerns. So it's not exactly 802.1as. And everything we've been doing in 802.1 is to define time-sensitive networking around the timing delivery that 802.1as provides. So with a very simple proposal highlighted here, a mechanism to move forward and completely disable the use of announce messages has been proposed, was well received. I expect that to move forward and be seen in an upcoming draft update to this profile. Some of the contention around this is simply it does put in question whether GPTP remains a profile of IEEE 1588, but IEEE 1588 already mentions AUTOSAR and the Avenue Automotive specification as profiles, and neither of them require announce messages either. So while it might be desired from the 1588 for full compliance perspective, having a mechanism to turn off announce messages does meet customers' needs. It sounds simple, but it allows a path forward where the AS standard actually can be utilized in this TSN space. And lastly, but perhaps of interest to some on this call, in the 10-base T1S space especially, the use of GPTP in half-duplex environments is of interest. And as such, ASDS has been working towards a solution here. No draft yet exists, but now there's a proposal that paves the way. It effectively says, don't use announce messages, don't use signaling messages, send unidirectional P delay, and with a few simple modifications, you can have any node in a T1S or any half-duplex environment be the grandmaster, and the time receiver nodes, formerly the slave nodes, respond to P delay requests appropriately. The proposal as shaped at the moment would have the time receivers filter based on the requesting port identity, clock identity field. So there's a little bit of state machine modification here, but it's not a heavy lift. No new frames are defined, and it does allow multiple concurrent domains to be in operation on the half-duplex medium. So that's an interesting path forward. We'll go back to the .3 update and give Jason one more try, or I'll try to cover his slide. Go ahead, Jason.
Can you hear me, Bob?
No.
It seems we have been trying to reach you via
Yes, I
chat.
see a raised hand. Feel free to chat your question if you can.
Seems with the
Oh,
internet, we are not able to find a way to
well,
notify Bob.
Jason, go ahead. If you can be heard by others, I just can't hear you.
Okay. Oh, then I appreciate everyone's support here and willingness to try to notify Bob. It's a group effort. Then we'll start with the 802.3 CY. I think since we last discussed the testing to limits, a good portion or a third of what we talked about was the CY task force. Fortunately, with the last draft of 3.1, moving to I think 3.3 earlier this year, the specification is finished as of midsummer, which is interesting. I'd be curious to see how this goes to market, and then the questions of which, as testing begins in CH, what things might find its way back to CY if there's any problems. Um, Moving on, the more interesting aspect is the new call for interest that was introduced in July, the Isaac idea. So asymmetrical applications for multi-gigabit Ethernet cameras. This recently became a study group in the September interim. The more interesting aspect, I would say, is they're trying to manage only automotive applications at the moment, although it seems others have brought up non-automotive applications. And of course, the biggest question is how can we make sure that an asymmetric PHY works? What kind of speeds we want each the uplink and the downlink, and what kind of savings could we make with power or other artifacts? Because heat cost in these new architectures is important, and trying to minimize the amount of connections. So I'm interested to see how this moves forward and what other groups potentially spin off of it as IEEE tries to take its stab at the asymmetrical applications that are different from what we've seen in the past, such as triple Ethernet or MIPI, AFI, or anything else like in terms of ASA. There are multiple different types of asymmetrical technologies, it seems, and we'll see what IEEE does with it. Continued progress of something we've been following for a little bit now, the .G working group, 100 megabit T1L. There was a couple more there was further investigations into their task force as they move forward and trying to implement the investigations and how these terminal blocks may be set up in an industrial environment, what the effects are with cables, and what that does for the insertion loss, return loss requirements, as well as next measurements. What does a 4-pin terminal block do with some gap in between? It was a little bit interesting to see. I don't think that was heavily as investigated in 10 T1L, but maybe I wasn't as further along in the process. So it's interesting to see how they're investigating how these devices are set up on terminal blocks, DIN rail systems in an application environment, and how those actually come back to what the standard requires for those measurements. Investigations as well were seen into what kind of FEC could be used in 100 base T1L, as well as the PCS encoding with, I think the one of note was 64, 65B. And then alongside that, the PAM requirement, what do they want to choose for PAM? I think typically most of the T1 technologies are stuck with PAM3, PAM4. They brought up PAM5, and then trying to understand the effects on the SNR there. So it's an interesting environment as they try to spec out more and get their specification rolling with the initial requirements and baseline for these tests at least. Moving to DA, there was an interesting first discussion. Those aren't aware, the next level of 10 base T1S enhanced multi-drop task force is looking at how they can essentially make more nodes, a longer reach, and improved requirements for a multi-drop environment, one of which includes power and data, or potentially one or the other. They're separately now 2 separate clauses, but I'll stop there for now. The discussions began with a specification. It's kind of interesting, I think, for those that aren't actively involved in IEEE all the time. The spec defines link segment requirements as well as limits for those link segments, or I guess maybe that's one and the same, and not length. They give an estimate of length or a general up to at least 10 meters or something like that. But full requirement is always on the link segment requirements. So it's sometimes a little confusing, and I think that's what they were trying to clarify there. People were sticking to certain lengths, and it's not always that we should specify the requirements. So that clarification is needed. Back to the power aspect, and I think maybe next time, Bob, we should, I guess, implore Craig to be involved in this, because it's more and more power side, and we should get some of our power team involved. As I'm mostly data side, I feel like I'm speaking roughly the idea. So I will ask more questions or provide more answers, hopefully with other groups at our lab here. But they put baseline text together for a 24 volt and a 50 volt, I guess, power requirements. So for those PSE, the different requirements for those, and trying to put forward and get feedback for that. Again, I'll probably have to ask Craig a little bit more, but there's a lot of interesting information on how they're going to provide power and data over a complex multi-mixing segment for T1S, and T1M is what this will be called. Other aspects that brought up were similar to TC10, a low power wake proposal, and trying to understand if the necessary requirements would be to try to save power in this sense, in this environment, and how we would go about doing that. There were a couple feedback back and forth, but mostly I think people were interested, but the gauge of how to get it clarified is the next question. Discussions lastly were then brought up on budget for power and data with general cable length again, or the cable requirements, and then those effects on some of the networking compensation circuits, and the amount of nodes or trunk connection interface points for different devices on this multi-point mixing segment. It's a rather interesting, let's say, engineered environment. So there's a lot of clarification needed to try to make sure this one works better than the T1S that was brought up before. I'll stop there, Bob, and I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll pass it back to you. It seems like you might be able to. So I'm glad we fixed our audio problems, and appreciate everyone taking the time to be patient.
I don't know how your laptop affected my audio, but somehow that happened. It's just miracles, I tell you. Yeah, no, that's all resolved. Thank you, Jason, and thanks for the tolerance as we bungle through our audio problems. But yeah, there is a lot of interesting 10 megabit and 100 megabit T1 work going on right now, some of which involving power, some of which involving the T1S space. And to that end, our next update pertains to our Plug Fest that we have coming up in just under 20 days. We're very thankful to our sponsors, Intrepid Control Systems and Technica Engineering, for helping to enable this Plug Fest. Folks who are looking to participate, feel free to look at the tiny URL 10 base T1S link there, so that we can get your registration captured. There is still some discussions with some parties looking to participate, so the event is still growing, but the scope, I think, is pretty much nailed down at this point. We are looking at PLCA load testing, advanced diagnostics, topology discovery, the sleep wake, or TC10 in the Open Alliance terms, and some conformance test coverage for PMA, PCS, PLCA, and half duplex MAC testing. So feel free to contact us about that and our services in general as that continues to evolve here. We do have tooling available that can generate arbitrary patterns, obviously control and cause collisions, things of that form, as well as looking forward to a growing set of industry tools from the sponsors and others that can leverage the full conformance testing as the effort moves forward. But I do want to stress that there are still problems that are being worked on in the Open Alliance that encourage parties who aren't actively participating in these meetings to sit in on, whether they're PMA related topics, as Jason was just alluding to, or some of the other development work that is still ongoing. That's why we want to try to do these Plug Fests every 6 months at least. So the last one we had was in December, so a little bit longer than that. But I think there's ample room for building confidence and building feedback into the testing plans that are in development, principally in the Open Alliance. Briefly, a couple updates here, some from April that we just want to make sure we still highlight. We still have work to do in the 10 base T1L space, but we have launched our 10base-T1L service. It can perform APL testing, and certainly working to expand our PCS, PHY control, and auto negotiation coverage for single pair Ethernet. In the APL space, auto negotiation is used. It is not used in the automotive space for various reasons, but to negotiate between low power and high power, or spur and trunk voltage levels, the auto negotiation mechanism is used and warrants further conformance testing development effort. But certainly folks can engage with us to pursue existing MAC testing services and some of the conformance test services that are available now, as well as the full APL certification testing. So any APL certification needed by P&O, ODVA, OPC Foundation, or Fieldcom Group, we can perform. And we have tooling and test fixtures available that can perform this in as much of an automated fashion as is reasonable. You know, obviously connecting to a VNA directly is preferable over going through relays and such. And there is an equipment list that the APL group maintains as far as approved devices. So we're certainly working with parties that are seeking to add more devices onto that list. Certainly feel free to reach out to us. I'll mention it here, and I'll mention it again in the EA slide, that we are working to promote a Clause 104 10base-T1L/APL Plugfest in the January timeframe. So certainly areas of interest there. Feel free to question or reach out on those topics. Again, just to highlight, this was mentioned previously, but a lot of groups, Avenue, Open, APL, really don't focus on full MAC conformance. And in full duplex cases, perhaps there's arguments where, oh, a little bit of preamble problem here or there, what else could go wrong? But in the T1S space, there's absolutely a need to look at full half-duplex MAC conformance, not just a subset, or looking at mixed mode PLCA, non-PLCA environments in the 10base-T1S setting. So certainly encourage folks to look at what we can offer you for MAC, both half and full conformance. We've been doing it for 35 years. Happy to continue to help folks. Here again, 10,000 base T1, we've had full coverage for the testing since January, continuing to find paths forward to develop type B physical layer testing, both for channel verification and PHY verification, and looking forward to a Plugfest next year that would help start to explore those early definitions. Further news since our last update, we have commenced work through the support from Cariad with the TC15 group within Open Alliance to do NG-based T1 PCS and PHY control work. This is relatively new and recent, but we are looking to have the draft test plans available in that group for their members in December of this year. And remember, the Open Alliance process, if you're not familiar, even if you're not a member, the test plans eventually become public, and they eventually become international standards. So input at this early stage will help shape those international standards that OEMs will be pointing towards. So feel free to reach out with any questions on that capability. I want to acknowledge a significant contribution from Leone for cables that are enabling test channels for both multi-gig and other environments. And there will be a Plugfest that the OA Open Alliance is running probably in February if it doesn't slip again. Just a reminder here on MACsec, we're continuing to expand our capabilities, update from older standards. If you have particular MACsec interests, please reach out or ask questions here. And similarly with ECUs, Open Alliance addresses a lot of these higher layer needs, be it for semiconductor switching or for full ECU validation. And we have capabilities through our automotive networking group for some of this capability growing in that area. And we currently and still have, since inception of the Avenue Alliance, been offering their certification for automotive purposes, for example. Briefly, again, we, in addition to the February event just mentioned for the Open Alliance, will be looking to have an event possibly in June of 2024 for further NG-based T1 PMA testing and to begin to showcase the PCS and PHY control testing that we expect to have online, at least in a partial form, through both tooling available from industry leaders, as well as our own third-party passive line tapping solutions to prove conformance for existing either shipping or prototype MG-based T1 parts. Continuing to work with the EEE space, because in my view, the PCS testing for MG-based T1 needs to include EEE compliance there as well. But that does spill into the TC16 space. And as mentioned, BACSEC, whether it's on T1S or MG-based T1, certainly is an area of interest to us that we are happy to leverage our past experience with to support the industry. So a lot of quick succession topics here. In a broader sense, we still are active with 100, 200, 400, 800 gigabit Ethernet. The next high-speed networking Ethernet Alliance event is in December, hosted at Intel Hillsboro. And we will have a follow-on PlugFest typically in the early May timeframe of next year, coincident typically with the IBTA PlugFests in that time. So if you have any interest in those, feel free to reach out. We are looking to have our Clause 104 SPOE and Poodle PlugFest in the January timeframe. We have full conformance testing for PDs and PSEs online now with tooling. We're working with industry leaders, getting their feedback and performing early testing, looking to have this PlugFest highlight that capability and highlight our, be it either T1L or if it's specific to APL capabilities. So certainly happy to support interests there. And the EA's Single Pair Ethernet committee is continuing to do work to try to investigate the space here further. Does there need to be a certification? Can they help coordinate more PlugFests? If you're certainly interested in that space, feel free to reach out to the EA on those topics. Briefly, just wider industry updates. The P1952 effort is still working towards a completed draft. This is for resilient position, navigation, and timing. This goes back to my IDO 2.1 TSN update. If all the standards are doing, PTP is just one example, it defines time transfer. It does not define anything to do with how the servo really behaves, how quickly you lock in, and how well you track, what your holdover requirements might be, what you do if you have two time sources. So the time solution, the FTM, the fault tolerant module in the aerospace TSN profile begins to define what to do in that space. Here with the P1952 effort, it's much broader, much more general. How do you identify threats, mitigate those threats so that you can fail safe or continue to function in the face of, say, jamming or spoofing or such. But it's not just focused on GNSS. GPS jamming and such is what the mind typically goes to with this topic, but it really can be from any level, from any technology. So this effort is ongoing. The new update here is the IEEE Conformity Assessment Program, or ICAP. We'll be having a webinar this month, date and time to be announced, but take a look at the website here that ICAP hosts for when that PNT website webinar will be hosted. And that will be, again, looking for interested parties to help shape how we qualify and certify devices as being resilient to the emerging IEEE standard. Certainly an interest of DHS, but it is an international standard that is being looked to be developed here. Briefly, we continue to work with the ORAN Alliance, and we're hosting yet again, in this case, the fall PlugFest for ORAN. So if you have any particular 5G front haul TSN or similar interests, feel free to reach out. This includes telecom profile activities, close partnerships with CalNex and others that enable this. And now just a brief update on something I mentioned back in April, and I'm happy to say that we have recently been awarded an NSF grant to support work in the sub-nanosecond timing space. So first, a little bit on White Rabbit. Again, this is something initially developed at CERN. It got added into the 2019 update of 1588 as the high accuracy mode. And CERN is looking to establish their White Rabbit collaboration. And this effectively would be an effort to both coordinate the various stakeholders, support the open source effort. This is from CERN. It's open source hardware, it's open source gateware, it's open source software. all achieving sub-nanosecond precisions that help enable things like the Large Hadron Collider at CERN to function. So there's many activities. How does the research get organized? What support can be provided to the community? And how do we validate solutions emerging to confirm that they meet the performance and conformance expectations that the White Rabbit technology expects? So the White Rabbit collaboration led by CERN is expected to kick off in early 2024. Folks are encouraged to reach out and communicate with CERN if you have those interests. But related to this effort, we expect to work with the White Rabbit collaboration to support our own NSF-funded activity, currently referred to as this open phase effort, the open source, precision, high accuracy, and security environment. This is supporting the NSF POSE effort. POSE is platform or pathways for enabling open source ecosystems. So this is, again, since CERN is producing open source hardware and software, we want to support the community contributors in this space, be they smaller organizations, individuals, to companies akin to Red Hat supporting Linux. And Saffron is just one of many companies that are in this space providing solutions based on this open source technology that we're looking to support, to help validate, to help run continuous integration environments so that the various updates to the White Rabbit PTP stack are still shown to be conformant and performant to the expectations of the community. So this is our effort running in parallel with the White Rabbit collaboration that will also be starting in the months ahead. So if you have very high precision needs or may simply benefit from the activity and the expansion here as we bring in more precise clocks and more precise measurement equipment, our overall time-sensitive networking capabilities will certainly be increasing through this effort. So in the months ahead, if any here have an interest in this higher precision space, feel free to reach out to us. We have some information on our website, and then again, our contact information at the end of these slides. All of this will be available for you to review offline. But in the interest of trying to stick to having a little bit of time for some Q&A and discussion, including we can go back and expand on any points, I'll just simply say, if you have particular topics that you'd like us to go into greater depth on, perhaps in our January update post the November plenary meeting, then feel free to ask. There's a few maintenance items, for example, that we've submitted that are going through 802.3 right now to be discussed there. I'm sure there's going to be outcomes from our plug fests. Depending on the timing here, we may have some insight into the direction that's going with the multi-gig activities. I'm certainly happy to take your questions now. But just as a reminder, in these slides, you'll have all our contact information. My colleague, Jason Sisk, who could be heard, and Michelle Wisnat, who helps keep everything running here. So feel free to engage with her. And if Mike can help you with any outreach of our services, we're happy to try to connect you there. And I'll just make one final mention before we open up to full questions to acknowledge the Open Alliance awardees recognized in their all members meeting just a couple of weeks ago down in Brazil, where somehow I get recognized. So thank you for that. But certainly want to acknowledge all those who were recognized, be it from Rosenberger, NXP, Axon, or BMW as well. There's a lot of work going on in the Open Alliance, and we all have to help row and steer the ship to keep this activity moving forward. So with that, I will simply ask if any have a topic or question, feel free to unmute or type your question as you wish. Or I can certainly try to expand on any topic if we did not provide it in enough detail for those in attendance here. Or if I talked over Jason too many times and he wants to elaborate on anything.
No, I think we figured that out, so I'm glad.
Questions, comments, beliefs in where the industry is going, or where you think some of the work, be it with Open, Avenue, ASA, IEEE, or otherwise, should occur. Don't be shy. I see a question. Yep. Certainly, we try our best to make our plugfests known. We update on our website, and our marketing team pushes announcements out through, I think, LinkedIn and Facebook and the thing currently called X. But certainly, the plugfests that I've mentioned, some of them are still tentative. We're definitely doing, for example, our 10-base T1S plugfest coming up here at the end of the month. Looking forward to the success there. We are extremely likely, but we haven't finalized on the exact date, pending a little bit of input from some key stakeholders, for January for the Clause 104 SPOE and Poodle Plugfest, along with T1L. Also looking for industry leaders, Telebyte and others, for example, to participate in that activity. And some of the other plugfests, be it an MG-based T1 plugfest or the 1000-base T1 Type B, are more tentative, given that we're aiming out towards the late May, June timeframe. But certainly, if there's details on any of the plugfests mentioned, even the high-speed networking ones that Ethernet Alliance is hosting, happy to try to provide more details for any offline. Another question. Yep. Okay. Right. Again, on the P1952 effort, this is emerging. I will expect some details to get posted on the IEEE ICAP website, but there's plenty of activity going on in 1952 itself as well. So those with an interest in seeing certifications of user equipment meeting the expectations of this emerging standard. Some of that is being defined in 1952, of course, with the standard, and some will be defined by the testing program. And honestly, in my opinion, the most likely space that will get addressed first, at least, is the static timing spaces, whether it's for telecom applications, digital substations, and the smart grid, things of that nature. Obviously, that has a little bit of a DHS interest, but also it's frankly a little bit easier to address given the strength of some of the standards in those spaces, ITUs especially. But again, dealing with what to do for resiliency is not typically standardized, and there might be good reason for that. But I'll cite again the aerospace update, where we don't have to necessarily all use the same algorithm for fault tolerance, but we want to at least define the standard mechanisms and interfaces that the standard calls for, how to manage and detect that, and define that, even if it's in a proprietary or more confidential setting than a published IEEE standard. But I do think it's beneficial to go down this path of defining these mechanisms to ensure that some consideration is given, and that a fault-tolerant solution, be it for aerospace or the telecom infrastructure or the smart grid, can certainly be applied. Other questions or comments? I see another. Yeah, it's a good question. There's a question about certifications for TSN AVB ports at 10 gig or above. I'll just pop back to that slide. We have, for quite some time, been performing testing for 100 gig is the dominant AVB solution. Sorry, I went by it. And by and large, logical behaviors, conformant GPTP stacks, credit-based shaper behaviors, if they can work at one speed, you might make the extension that they can work at other speeds, but it's certainly not a guarantee. We do currently have the capability with a Keysight Ixia solution to drive up through 2.5, 5, and 10 gig TSN-driven traffic. Where I see a fault in the industry, and I mean, I know it's hard, so I acknowledge this challenge, is beyond 10 gig, as the question was raised. I don't see TSN solutions that are currently available that can support those speeds. Now, can we make use of ad hoc solutions? Likely. For example, if we look at the credit-based shaper in exclusion of any of the other protocols, then any test tools from Spirent, Xena, now I guess Teledyne, LaCroix, since they just recently got acquired, or Keysight Ixia, as long as we can verify that the credit-based shaper is shaping properly, then testing at those speeds can be performed. 802.1as, similarly, we just need a hardware timestamping NIC, and our testing solution could operate at those higher speeds. But a single solution that can do it all, like the current Keysight Ixia solution that can run MSRP, MVRP, GPTP, and provide 1722 controlled streams into a network, I'm not aware of a current solution that supports above 10 gig speeds at the moment. There's certainly a need in the telecom spaces in the front haul, but again, really what they're currently doing in the front haul is the ITU telecom profile, and I guess I think they did define preemption, but I'm not really sure anyone's using it because you don't really need preemption at these higher speeds. So what is currently common at these high speeds, and we see this with our own ORAN activity. Plenty of these ORAN devices are coming through that are 10, 25, 40 gig, and we're making use of Calnex products like their Neo or their Neo A to verify the ITU standards in that space. But outside of testing at those speeds, I'm not sure that there's anything that I would really characterize as a TSN test solution as of yet. Interesting footnote, we are working with Calnex through our NSF grant to acquire some of this newer higher speed timing, performance, and characterization test capability. So again, if you have interest there, please do reach out to us and let us know. Just to clarify, yes, for the Avenue certification, I wouldn't say there's a limit in that be it Avenue or any other party, ourselves included, aren't saying you can't test at a higher speed, but it is a tooling challenge. The Avenue Alliance, I've had this discussion with them. If we can demonstrate the ability to test all the requirements at, say, 40 gig, then they would certify 40 gig ports. That would certainly happen. So again, whether it's 40 gig or 25 gig or 100 gig, some clarification on what speeds are of interest would be helpful, because there are many, many choices. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not aware of a solution that would make it expedient currently on the market. Good questions. Thank you. Is there any technology area that you expected to hear that we haven't addressed, or that we perhaps could expand on slightly if enough detail was not provided? There are many, many spaces to SPE and TSN. For example, I did not give an update on the industrial TSN effort. That is progressing nicely. There is an industry coalition beginning to define testing for this space. This is driven largely by Avenue, P&O, and to respect the bad memory I have and not disrespect the other supporters, I'll stop there, but several other industry automation leading organizations. So certainly if you're interested in more on what's happening with the industrial effort, I can connect you with that. Yes, I got a question on when the ORAN Fall Plug Fest is. It's always a little bit nebulous, I'm sorry to say. it's over a period of time. And after the Plugfest happens, then the ORAN Alliance has recorded sessions where updates are given. And that's usually in the early December timeframe, but I can try to shoot back specifics on that. But I will look, our website may very well have it posted when we're hosting. So we are the North American coordinator. I'm not the one doing the work, which is why it's not in my memory. And we are coordinating with various labs and facilities in North America to have that event. This year, this event, it's a little bit light in participation here, so we're certainly open to more, be it telecom, front haul, or other participants being involved there. Let me just take a quick look at our website. So it is posted on our homepage, and while registration might be passed, yeah, so it's running from August 27th through December 8th. So I believe the updates will be the week following December 8th. And this is usually something, at least the ORAN Alliance membership, those are recorded sessions and slides that are generally available. Offhand, I can't comment if they are published publicly. I just don't know. But I can look into that. If there's other questions, I'm happy to take the remaining 10 minutes. I'm also, very thankful for everyone's participation here, and want to be respectful of your time. If you want to reach out and have a one-on-one discussion with any in our team, happy to do so on any of the topics mentioned, or if we omitted something that you just want to discuss privately with us, feel free to reach out. Very much looking forward to our next update. Given the holidays, I expect that will be after the new year, but we'll see exactly how December unfolds here. And again, thank you for your time. We'll post these slides up. And if there is a question.
We might have one raised hand here.
I saw that come up. Let me see. How do I see that?
It may have went away though.
Oh, someone unmuted, and apologies. Go ahead if you have a question.
Will these slides be posted anywhere, Bob? This is Morgan Monks.
Yes. We do post these. We should have that link in the slides, but we'll reach out to the attendees here when these are posted. So
very good. Share.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Horn Pang Lee, do you have a question? I don't see a question. Apologies if we're missing a chat. I think I've checked all the options in the tool here.
Guess it'll be, I think about what's next is if we'll see anybody at the November plenary. Maybe
yes, anyone at the IEEE 802 plenary, Jason and I will be there. Feel free to corner us there. Looking forward to that. And if there's other upcoming industry events beyond what's been mentioned, feel free to let us know. Again, I'm just going to end with the mention of our next Plugfest, just one of several coming up. And again, a special thanks to Intrepid and Technica for enabling this. Thank you very much for your attendance today, and look forward to catching up with you in a couple months. Thanks all.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everyone.